to Okay But Listen, a raw, unfiltered podcast where we amplify the voices of young people who really represent different ideologies across the spectrum. Today, we're going to be talking about freedom of speech. And today, our guest is Grace from the 19th. She's a journalist who is young, who really sits at the center of who gets heard and who doesn't. Grace, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Before we get started, I'd really love for you to talk to the audience a little bit about the 19th.
Yeah, absolutely. The 19th News, we are an independent, nonprofit national newsroom reporting at the intersection of gender, politics, and power.
And if Grace had a theme song that, represented her work every day at the 19th, what would it be?
Probably Ride by Lana Del Rey, which is a song I've loved for years and years since I was a teenager. And my favorite part of my job is getting to go out on the road and talk to people and just, seeing America. It's such a huge privilege that I get in my job. And that song, I feel like I manifested what I would end up doing as a career with how much I listened to that song when I was younger.
So currently you're in DC. And honestly, as a Gen Z, which I was backstage, I was telling everybody, I was telling Grace, y'all, I was like, I am avoiding DC at all costs. But as a Gen Z journalist, how are you navigating reporting in a world where every fact is a battlefield right now?
Yeah, every fact really is a battlefield. I've been in this industry for about 7 years now, and it's really just transformed so much. And I think that speaks to the Gen Z experience. Whether you're older Gen Z like I am, I was born in 1998, so I'm 27, and the younger, Gen Zers, we've all had very different experiences, I think, because of technology. When I kind of got my start in journalism, I feel like at the tail end of the golden age of digital media back in 2018, when Twitter was, still a fun place to be. And now the social media landscape looks very, very different. And it's more important than ever, both to be accurate and truthful, but to also, be transparent. That's really what people are looking for right now, in addition to being factual and truthful. And, I've learned a lot of lessons too about facts. Back in 2020, there was a big emphasis on fact checking and debunking things. And now we know that that's not as effective in the media landscape we're in right now. And so I think I'm trying to serve both the need, obviously, for accuracy, but also transparency.
Or alternative facts.
Facts,
yeah. I've heard those. So right now, I feel like freedom of speech is being weaponized. Mainly from one side of the aisle than the other. I'm interested in knowing, right now, what does the rise in free speech debates say about the current state of American democracy?
Well, I think it speaks to the fact that many people, especially in Gen Z, are dissatisfied. They don't think democracy is working for them. And I think what we're seeing now with some of the latest debates over free speech really play into that. There's some really interesting research I was reading to prepare from Protect Democracy and Circle at Tufts University, that young people, by and large, really agree with the principles of democracy, including free speech, but they don't think it's working in practice in the United States. And when I, was going to college, I went to Barnard College, started in the fall of 2016, and there's such a strong tradition at Barnard and Columbia of protests, free speech, speaking your mind, having spirited debates. And now we're seeing that kind of speech getting cracked down on. And I do worry, what that is going to do to a generation that is already skeptical about democracy in this country.
And why do you think social media is so important now more than ever when it comes to what you just talked about?
Yeah, social media is more important now more than ever, because it's where a lot of people, and especially a lot of members of Gen Z, are going first to get their news and really how they see the world. It's through the prism, 10, 15 years ago, it might have been Facebook that was the big driver, and then Twitter. Now it's really TikTok for young people, or Instagram. They're getting their news through bite-sized pieces of vertical video. And that really, really has big implications for how we think about news consumption for those of us in the journalism industry trying to reach new audiences. And it has really significant ramifications for democracy if that's how a lot of people are seeing the world and experiencing political debates.
Yeah, I'm interested in knowing how this has changed the way in which newsrooms and journalists talk about issues that are important to young people. Is it showing up to where they are? Which I think the 19th is doing that perfectly.
Well, thank you for saying that. This is like an ongoing conversation, and it's kind of an existential moment for us as a newsroom and for the journalism industry, trying to navigate a climate that is, really difficult for traditional media to even exist and be financially viable, but also reach where people are. I think a big part of that is meeting people where they are on social media, but also kind of thinking outside the box, and recognizing that what people really want in this moment is authenticity. And that's why independent creators are having such a huge moment, and why people are turning to social media is because, frankly, a lot of people feel let down by institutions, including the legacy media. And that's something that I think we should have curiosity about, and try to, work around.
And honestly, that's what I've been screaming from the rooftops since the 2024 election is like, young people feel let down by just the institutions.
Yeah.
Whether it is traditional media or the traditional two-party system. I think young people feel that no one is speaking to them. No one, there's not many people that represent them or look like them, which is why I think it's so important that there are journalists and people that we can trust like you, who we can look to, because I'm like, you know what? Grace doesn't indeed represent me. LOL, you were like, oh, I'm at the tail end of Gen Z. Actually, I am. So I'm still 27, but I was born in 97. So my birthday's later in the year. But I'm like, yeah, we are pretty much at the tail end, Grace.
Yeah. And it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. My Rachel Genfaza, whose work I'm sure you're familiar with, she has this theory about Gen Z 1.0, which you and I are in, and Gen Z 2.0, which is the generation that was in high school or graduating high school and in college during the pandemic. They're the folks that are most likely to be getting their news on TikTok.
Yeah.
And it really changes the way we think about what does a generation even mean, and does 15 years even, is that a correct metric of a generation now? Big questions for sure.
Definitely. And the fact that even now Gen Alpha will be voting soon, and that's like a whole even different kind of generation. But we're going to have some fun. Okay, so let's breathe. We are going to go into a segment that we like to call uncancelable. And quite frankly, one of the things that really just, makes me sad is that a lot of young people, specifically on the progressive space, often feel isolated because they can't, speak their truth without the fear of being canceled.
Yeah.
So I say, let's have an uncancelable segment and have fun. Yeah. So this will still be fun though. Don't be afraid that you're going to lose your job at the 19th. Tell Aaron it was Mary-Pat's.
Yeah.
I'll die on that sword for you. You don't have to. So what do you think is the most overrated take about cancel culture?
That trying to, hold someone accountable or have an open discussion means someone's being canceled. People are so quick to often shut down tough and needed conversations about accountability or about having a different view with, oh, this person's trying to cancel me, or this person's getting canceled and that's bad. And I think it's contributing in a lot of ways to political polarization, the idea that any kind of disagreement means someone's getting canceled and written off.
Yeah. What's your toxic media habit? Mine is replying to all of the comments. My partner, he's always like, stop commenting. You don't have to reply to every comment. You're commenting from your real page, and then they're going to go back and research you and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, listen, I'm going to be in the comments. What is your toxic media habit?
Going down rabbit holes on TikTok and scrolling, but never during work hours. If my editor's watching this, that never happened.
Yes. I think after the election, I too was down a rabbit hole. I think it got to a point to where a couple of my friends were like, girl, stop calling me, stop, scaring me halfway to death, and I want to breathe. So I feel that. What part of online culture is holding us back from meaningful change, do you think?
I think the demand, and we see this, across the board, the need for purity and being right all the time. I think we should normalize changing your opinion when presented with new information. I think that's a sign of, critical thinking skills, media literacy skills, which we need more of. It's okay to change your mind when presented with new information. It's okay to change your mind as you get older. And that's, what I kind of feel like in this digital space where so many people's opinions are recorded down on social media. It makes it harder to have that natural evolution in your thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah. And I think, like you were saying, I've been in this work for quite some time. And trust me, what I said back in 2015 is probably not what I even feel today as a mom and a very grown woman. So I don't know. Last thing, I think I'd love to hear from you. Like, what's a phrase that you never want to hear on a headline again? Mine is woke.
Oh,
I feel like the Republican, but first of all, they're like 5 years too late. Woke was a big thing in like 2018 when we had them on t-shirts. They're like dragging it at this point. I'm so sick of woke and wokeism. But what do you think?
I would say this is like a niche media thing. Well, okay, first, like any headline that describes something as viral. I hate the word viral. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does viral mean? And also any headline that begins with inside XYZ. I think it's a really overused format. And honestly, when I see that, and I've used that format a couple times, it just makes me think, oh, there's not really new information in here if it's just inside XYZ.
Well, we're going to dig deep into more conversations, mainly like what we're seeing right now when it comes to college campuses and freedom of speech. I'm interested in knowing, like, universities used to be a place where people could have open discourse and open conversations. But now what we're seeing are protest bans, more surveillance on college campuses, attacks on DEI. What are you seeing in your reporting or, in newsrooms when it comes to what we're witnessing right now on college campuses and how this can impact freedom of speech in a broader sense for young people?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, when I was in college, there was a very, very active climate surrounding protests, often heated political discussions, including around the Israel-Palestine conflict. That is not new. That did not start in 2023. When I was in college, there were referendums on divestment at Barnard and Columbia and people campaigning for both sides of those referendums. There was a thing called Apartheid Week, which was a big week-long protest in front of the main college walk at Columbia. And now we're seeing crackdowns on protests. We're seeing students getting threatened, suspended, having their degrees threatened. And also what I'm finding really troubling is crackdowns on student journalism, whether it's student journalists getting subpoenaed or at my alma mater of Barnard College getting, threatened even with, suspensions or having their ability to graduate threatened. That to me is really troubling, especially in an environment where we know that so many young people already feel disillusioned with democracy and don't feel like it's working for them. And of course, it's important to note that, not all of Gen Z are on campuses and definitely not the elite colleges that get the most media attention, but it speaks to kind of a broader trend we're seeing that makes a lot of people just want to check out. And I'm so proud of the amazing student journalists all around the country, including at Barnard and Columbia, and in an industry that's already, really hard to work in. Yeah, I do fear about what these crackdowns mean for people just wanting to participate at all, because it's very easy to check out, but, we often don't realize what we've got till it's gone. And that's absolutely the case with democracy. And I think we're really seeing that right now.
When I was a student at Spelman College, I actually led like a week and a half long hunger strike.
Oh, wow.
To bring awareness to food insecurity on campus. And that's actually how I got involved in RISE.
Yeah.
Back in 2017, 2018, when I was at Spelman. And, I think about how my campus experience would have been had I not been awarded the opportunity to just protest. Like my form of protest. Honestly, my form of protest really didn't harm anyone. I honestly was just thinking, like, what is the form of protest that we can do that, did limit us potentially getting expelled, but everyone's form of protest will be different. Yeah. While we were doing our protests at Spelman, students were organizing and advocating for the same thing at Howard, except their protests looked like locking themselves into the administrative building. And so protests look different on different campuses, but I often wonder, how that would have really reshaped, and not the best way, my experience while at college. How do you think that this is impacting student life on campuses right now, what we're witnessing with the administration? Because there's always the administration versus the student. Like that exists on campus. How do you think that's playing out?
Yeah, that's definitely long been a tension, both as student activism and student journalism. And I think now it's a really critical point. We obviously, there's such a long history of student protest having meaningful results with, the civil rights movement or the movement against apartheid, and the U.S.'s support for it. Now, what we're seeing are these sort of wide-scale crackdowns, policies being applied unevenly. It's a real crisis of confidence for academia, no matter how you look at it. And I do think that it has had, a marked effect on student life, especially at some of these campuses like Columbia that have had the most protest activity and the greatest crackdowns. And you also have to, remember, this is a group of students, many of whom started their college experiences during the COVID pandemic and already started school online, didn't have that, great freshman year on campus that, I had. So that's how they started their student careers. And then for many, that's how they ended, with all of these crackdowns and protests and just a really tense environment in general. And I do worry about that younger generation of Gen Zers and what kind of, because it's such a formative age and those formative years, definitely for you, definitely for me. And I think maybe we'll take some time before we see the ramifications of that.
And it's so interesting because I think about conversations that I have with my grandfather or even my mom, and they're like, yeah, when I was young, like we protested this, or we like, I feel like that's also just something that you often see, generationally, because Coretta Scott King once said, struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You win it and earn it in every generation. And I think like between that age of like 16 and 29 years old, young people have this sense of fearlessness, and this sense of urgency to stand up against issues that are impacting marginalized communities. And so it makes me sad that, we're living in a time where, and again, like this is coming from a side that's always been so free speech and freedom of speech. And like it's going in a different direction. But I want to move into the suppression of free speech online. Like we can post a protest video today and it can do two things. It could either go viral or it could be completely silenced and then we become shadow banned. I'm interested in knowing, have platforms become too powerful in deciding what counts as free speech?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think there's so many different angles and answers to that. I definitely think, when it was surrounding the 2016 election, there was a lot of attention focused on Facebook and the many failures of Facebook and Meta to crack down on harmful speech. And so then we kind of saw this big move by platforms into fact checking, taking stuff down. I remember this was a really big thing with Twitter before Elon Musk bought it and turned it into X. And at the time that was heralded as, oh, it's a good thing, all this fact checking and suspending accounts. But it also raises questions of how much power should platforms have to decide who belongs, what speech is tolerable versus not, because we have, in this country, at least very, very broad First Amendment protections that our founding fathers left to us. And it's been up to us to kind of interpret them. And I think that's also why the rise of TikTok has been so powerful, because their algorithm is like so sensitive to what you want to see. You can see, and I think that's why it's really taken off among young people. The other thing I'll note is when we talk about platforms and ways that people share news and share political news, I feel like the group chats are underrated, because the group chat is the one place where an algorithm can't suppress what's being talked about. And those have been really big drivers of conversation for me and my friends, not just because we work in DC, but for others as well. And so I think, yes, platforms are figuring themselves out, but I feel like the group chats and what can't be, the kind of speech that can't be suppressed is also really important political force.
Do you feel like these organizations, TikTok, Facebook, even X, even though we don't really use X. But do you believe that these companies have a responsibility to explain how our political content is moderated or not?
Yeah, I think they should definitely be transparent for sure. I don't know that, you can have all the transparency in the world.
And the algorithm still isn't algorithming. Are there ways in which it's unevenly applied or it still doesn't make sense or still can be harmful? But yeah, definitely always on the side of more transparency from tech platforms. So I do want to go into kind of like a fun segment. We'll start with questions from Mecca. And this particular game is a game created by a Gen Z woman of color. And we always, I personally utilize these games, during family time. But I said, you know what? Let me just bring it with me today and ask all of my guests some questions from my favorite game. And don't feel embarrassed because I'll share too. So we can just do a dual share.
Oh, excellent.
We can do a dual share.
Yeah.
So first question is, what is the worst date you've ever been on?
Oh my gosh. Probably the time when I was a freshman in college. It was like the heyday of the dating apps. And I was in New York City and I just like went wild with it. So one time this guy met off a dating app and I went to a movie theater where I brought like a water bottle full of vodka, being the college freshman I was. And then he was like living with his parents at the time, but he was like, I know like an abandoned or like a vacant apartment we can go hang out.
What?
Yeah. So I went and hung out with this guy in like an abandoned, like not abandoned. It was a vacant apartment that he somehow had the key to. Definitely.
So it really wasn't abandoned because he had the key.
Yeah. No, it wasn't abandoned. It was just vacant. No one was living there.
Yeah. It sounded like his dad's apartment.
No, it was completely empty.
Okay.
It was completely
empty.
empty.
Like his parents probably owned the empty apartment.
I don't know. I don't know that they did. It was like in a buildings, like in Harlem. I think it was like his friend knew about this vacant apartment.
I don't know.
Yeah. That was...
Yours isn't as worse as mine. So this was also in college. I feel like everyone had their worst dating whatevers in college.
Oh, yeah.
I was in college and went out with a dude. I'm just going to put him on Front Street. His name was Sheldon. LOL. Everybody looked up like, oh, she's going there. So I go on a date with Sheldon and we are just vibing out. I've gone on like maybe 3 dates with Sheldon by this time. And by our 4th date, the waiter comes up to me. It's literally a girl that I see in Spanish class every single day. Right?
Oh my God.
Now, like he's like, oh, we're at like a sports bar at this point. So he's like, yeah, I'm waiting for a few of my friends to come, catch up with you later. So I leave because I'm thinking, this is the end of our date. Mm-hmm. Right. And the girl calls me and she's like, hey, girlie, when you left 5 minutes later, Sheldon was gone. So I'm like, wait, not that Sheldon has been ditching and dodging all across Atlanta. And I didn't know it. So then I literally like sent her my half of the money, sent her Sheldon's photo, his phone number, and his Instagram, and was basically like, put Sheldon's photo at the front door and let him know he can't come back. And I literally like read him for filth in the text message, like, have you really been like running off on the bill?
That's wild.
This whole time?
That's wild.
And then someone could be like, oh, well, Sheldon paid for all your dates. But like on our 3rd date, I was like, oh, well, let me take you to like a basketball game. Mm-hmm. So I had took him to like a Hawks game. We were in a box. The parking was paid for. Food and drinks came with the box. Like, come on now. That was a bomb date. In college too. But no, Sheldon was ditching and dodging. So, I mean.
That's crazy work.
He had keys to an abandoned apartment, but Sheldon was running off on the bill across Atlanta. So, and I could have gone to jail. So there's that.
I mean, same.
Yeah. I guess we've both been risking our lives from protests to boys in college.
Yeah, there's no man who that's ever worth it for. If there are any younger girls watching this.
And that's why, based on what you were saying, you're thinking back in like 2016, 2015, it's not what it would be as like a full grown adult woman who's like front lobe developed.
No. Yeah, definitely not. I knew nothing. I knew nothing of the world.
Listen, I don't know, but I stand Grace. Okay. So I'm interested in hearing a few questions. Mm-hmm. We're going to call this our split screen segment. So here's the contradiction. Mm-hmm. So Gen Z wants a space and radical transparency. We want an inclusive discourse and rights. So can we have both? So basically, I'll ask you a question and then you pretty much give me an answer.
Yeah.
This is a new segment that we have. Okay. So just vibe out with me.
Okay.
And if you don't like it, you know what? I'm going to skip that one.
Okay.
Let's go back to red flag, green flag.
Okay.
So I'm going to throw out some like media trends, digital or, behavioral hot takes. And you tell me if it's a red flag or a green flag or not. Mm-hmm. And then we'll keep going. So reporting breaking news via TikTok before verifying sources.
Red flag.
Red flag. Have you seen that happen?
Oh, all the time. All the time. Yeah. It's rampant.
Using Instagram carousels as your only news source.
Red flag.
Red flag. A friend of mine always tells me, like, oh my God, I get my news from the Shade Room. And I'm like, girl, the Shade Room doesn't fact check either. Get off the Shade Room. And they just use clickbaity titles. Influencers using their platform to promote social justice causes and raise awareness.
I would say yellow flag. It depends. You know, it's your platform.
Yeah.
Do what you want with it.
Do with it. Universities suspending student orgs for protest activity.
With the caveat, it depends on the case. Overall, that I've seen, orange to red flag.
Okay. Journalists using Twitter threads to clarify misinformation.
Green flag, although that's less effective now. It just feels like posting into the void.
Yeah, makes sense. Labeling any criticism as a threat to free speech.
Red flag.
Pitching op-eds with clickbait titles that contradict the argument.
Huge red flag.
Okay. News outlets prioritizing page views over paywalls?
It depends. That's a tough question. It really depends on the business model. I think it can be a red flag to prioritize page views, but it's also just so hard to make a journalism business work now.
I'm interested in knowing, like, as a Gen Z journalist, how are you ensuring that your information is getting out to young people, especially post 2020, 2024, where I think 2020 made a lot of young people create this distrust for the government. I think like COVID, vaccines, influencers, and like whatever the propaganda that they're trying to push. But like, how do you ensure that young people are getting the correct information, or how do you use social media to do that?
Yeah. And this idea of journalists having to do double duty of trying to get their own work out through the morass and the void of different platforms and algorithms, that's relatively new. It does take a ton of work. And it's, definitely not my favorite part of my job. There are a lot of times where I'm just like so exhausted from reporting a story and writing it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do more work to promote it. But it is really important if we want democracy to have a fighting chance. Got to work hard to get our information and meet people where they are without judgment. I've been trying to, I'm a long time power user of Twitter, now X. It's less useful for news. Trying to get a little bit into Blue Sky. The 19th, we have a great social team. We have an Instagram page, but we've also been experimenting with other methods of getting out there. One of which has been AMAs on Reddit and posting our stories to Reddit. I did a Reddit AMA a few weeks ago with a colleague. And so it really just requires creativity, I think. And it's something I'm still figuring out. I don't have all the answers.
As a young person looking for a good source, what app would it be? Blue Sky? Would it be Reddit? Like, where would you send a young person to gather good information where they could also find the facts themselves, dig deep?
I would say to start with like the local newsroom in your area. Local news. It does such, incredible, indispensable work for democracy. And we've just seen so many job losses and cuts in that arena. So yes, I know people have mixed feelings about paywalls. A lot of people don't like them, but that's what pays for the good quality, accurate journalism. So subscribing to your local newspaper is a great start.
Yeah, for me, it's AJC. So I think, we are
They're awesome.
We've subscribed to the AJC. But what she's saying, y'all, is that we've got to get our information from more places than just TikTok.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just TikTok. I was so anti-TikTok. Like, I didn't get on TikTok until this year.
Oh, wow.
Prior to that, like during the pandemic, something just didn't feel right because I feel like they were just forcing TikTok on us, and I was just wanting to be the differenter and like anti-TikTok. And now I'm behind the curve. So
I love TikTok. I've been on it since 2019.
So are you doing dances and stuff?
No, I don't really post all that much. I'm just, a lurker. It's interesting to see like what cultural trends and conversations there are, especially for Gen Z, because that's really where it starts. So
Okay, great. But we can't continue to lurk. We've got to be face to camera, reporting the news. Girl, we got to get on the TikTok. And all these people are like monetizing.
I know.
Making money. I literally didn't like it. I was so sad. It's so funny. Are you familiar with Drewski?
I don't know that I am.
He's like a young comedian online. I literally randomly saw Drewski's Instagram, like YouTube pop up on my YouTube one night. It had to be like 2:57 a.m. I remember the time vividly because I was like, what time is it? I literally looked at how many views Drewski had in like this past month. It was 119 million views.
Wow.
A person who gets a view on TikTok and maybe between 5 to 25 cents. So I said, okay, if Drewski had 15 cents each view that he had within the past month, Drewski brought in $17 million off of his YouTube in 1 month. Grace.
Yes.
Like, maybe we should just quit our jobs and just become content creators and, figure out the rest of everything else tomorrow. But now I know, like, people are, like, in their content creation bag.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a whole new creator economy. It's a very real thing. But you're still kind of the same with journalism now. You're still at the mercy of these apps and the algorithms. And we don't know how much longer TikTok will be around for in the U.S.
And so if you could tip me off, so you do, like, again, you feel like I should be focused on Blue Sky. You feel like there's another app out there. I feel like I tried to do the whole, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I can't think of the name right now. Everyone's going to yell at me. But all of the journalists are like Substack.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's like, do you have a Substack?
I don't. I've thought about starting one. I don't know what I would write about that's super different from my reporting, but there are a lot of people I know who have had really big success on there, including a lot of DC journalists.
Yeah, I feel like Substack is like the big thing for journalists. I think that may be a good place for young people to potentially go and get good sources of information as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And it really speaks just how different, in many ways, the most successful pathway to being a journalist is by becoming essentially a content creator and having your own audience and revenue stream of income. It's just a very new thing that's popped up really in the past 5 to 10 years. And it's, revolutionized the way that we think about media and journalism for sure.
So as we close out, I'm interested in just allowing you to share with our audience today, what do you think they should do to begin advocating in small ways to protect free speech of students, free speech of journalists, or speaking their truth? What does that look like now, or what are small ways in which they can begin supporting or protecting or even, utilizing their own voices to protect free speech?
Yeah, listen, democracy is not a spectator sport. We only have a democracy because we choose to participate in it every day. And if we don't, it'll slip away before our eyes and might be too late before we realize it. I would say start small, being engaged and involved in your community is huge. There are a lot of reasons, if you don't like politicians or you don't like the traditional mainstream media, that's fine. You don't have to. But being engaged in your community and the people around you is, kind of the bedrock of this democracy we have here in the U.S. And that means, showing up even when it's inconvenient sometimes, having uncomfortable conversations with people, being open to disagreeing, opening to hashing things out. And also, accepting, that you can change your mind with new information. That's okay. Yeah. That's okay for other people too. I think that, when we really engage in that free discourse, it's our way towards getting out of this zone we're in now where it's so polarized and so much of our reality is determined by our algorithms. And I think logging off, touching grass, getting involved in your community, having face-to-face conversations is our way forward.
And just touch some grass.
Yeah, some grass.
Stay out of my comments and just touch some
freshly cut grass.
I support that. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, Grace. And thank you all for listening to Okay But Listen. If you all would love to learn a little bit more about Grace, I encourage you all to tap in and visit the website of the 19th. Grace, would you like to share you all's website, your platforms?
Yeah, it's just 19thnews.org, and that's 19.
All right. Thank you all so much, and we will see you during our next episode.